In the early 1990s, Howard Schultz visited Italy, where he noticed the locals enjoying cold and slushy coffee drinks during the hot summer months. Schultz was intrigued by the idea of creating a cold coffee beverage for Starbucks, as the company's menu primarily featured hot coffee drinks at that time. Upon his return to the United States, Schultz shared his vision with Starbucks' product development team. However, the team was initially resistant to the idea, as cold coffee beverages were not a common trend in American coffee culture. Undeterred, Schultz persisted and eventually convinced the team to experiment with creating a cold and blended coffee drink. The team developed what we now know as the Frappuccino, a sweet, icy, and blended coffee beverage. The drink was introduced to the Starbucks menu in 1995. Initially, it was available in only a few locations and was not an immediate success. The turning point came when Starbucks tested the Frappuccino at a store in Santa Monica, California. The location was close to a popular beach, and customers were looking for a refreshing cold drink. The Frappuccino quickly gained popularity amongst beachgoers, and its success eventually led to the widespread introduction of the beverage across all Starbucks stores. The Frappuccino went on to become one of Starbucks' most successful and enduring products, contributing significantly to the company's revenue and expanding its appeal to a broader audience, especially during the warmer months. The story highlights Howard Schultz's innovative thinking, persistence, and willingness to take risks in introducing new products that may not conform to existing norms. And with that, welcome back to Leaders, a podcast dedicated to exploring the best leaders this world has ever seen. That intro excerpt was on Howard Schultz, the subject of episode 23, the man behind Starbucks as we know it today. And a lot of the learnings are taken from, he's published a few books, but really primarily the book Onward, How Starbucks Fought for Its Life Without Losing Its Soul, as well as a few other podcast and interview resources from Howard. And so really Howard gets his start out of college as a salesman at Xerox in 1976. He works at that for a while, and in 1982, he becomes the Starbucks Director of Retail Operations and Marketing. He would serve as CEO of Starbucks in three sort of different stints: 1986 to 2000, came back 2008 to 2017, and on an interim basis in 2022 into early 23. A few other defining career moments for him was his first visit to Italy, and the significance of that is that during a business trip, he was captivated by the coffeehouse culture there. The experience planted the seed for his vision of transforming Starbucks into a place where people could enjoy high-quality coffee in a communal setting. The purchase of Starbucks in 1987 with a group of investors he purchased from the founders, that really marked a pivotal moment where he took control of the company and began implementing his vision of creating that experience. In 1992, there was expansion and an IPO, so they expanded rapidly, opening stores across the U.S. and internationally. Company went public in 92, providing the capital needed for further expansion and solidifying it as a major player in the coffee industry. He does take a temporary departure and return 2000 to 2008. So he stepped down as CEO in 2000, returned in 2008 during a challenging period for Starbucks. His return marked a crucial moment where he led the company through a revitalization strategy, closing underperforming stores and refocusing on core offerings. In 2015, he launched a Race Together campaign aiming to stimulate the conversations about race relations. While the campaign faced criticism and was eventually discontinued, it highlighted his commitment to addressing social issues and using Starbucks as a platform for social responsibility. He did show resilience during the economic downturn of 2008-2009. The company faced, at that point, financial challenges, but Schultz's resilience and strategic decisions such as store closures and cost-cutting measures contributed to that recovery. The La Boulange acquisition and closure but between 2012 and 2015 was another time period. And so he acquired that bakery chain in 2012 to enhance the Starbucks food offerings. However, that acquisition faced challenges, and he made the decision to close all locations in 2015, showcasing his willingness to make tough decisions for the long-term benefit of the company. And so he did step down as CEO in 2017, really in a transition to executive chairman, assuming that role and marking a change in his operational responsibilities, allowing him to focus more so on the long-term strategy of Starbucks. He did do some foray into a political career in 2019, so he explored the possibility of running for U.S. presidency as an independent in 2020. He ultimately didn't decide to do that, but really reflected his time and that point in the interest of civic engagement and public service. He developed one earlier quality before all of this at an early age, and that was a sense of humility. And so he says, I was very fortunate. I finished school. I somehow convinced people at Xerox to hire me. I didn't have a business degree. I got a sales job at Xerox. This was 1976. At Xerox, first they sent you to a sales training school, and then for 6 months after that, all you do is make 50 cold calls a day. Not on the phone. You have to make physical cold calls to an office. I think the rejection of cold calling, the humility that comes with the disappointment of someone not saying yes to you. I went through a steep learning curve, and I started having a higher level of self-esteem. And he also describes the feeling as when he stepped into the first Starbucks store, he was impressed. This is the kind of environment and product and young company I would like to be part of. Over the course of a year, I kept banging the door to say that to the founders, if you expand the company, I think I can help you. And then as he stepped down in 2000 as CEO, he says, I felt like I was repeating myself. I no longer felt engaged in the fun, creative part of the business where I get the most joy. I was not having fun. I decided I needed a break. I did step away. I was chairman, and as chairman, I should have been paying more attention to the company. He does come back as CEO in 2008 and facilitates a rather great turnaround, and so he is one of the probably few globally recognized CEO who turned around a multi-billion-dollar enterprise when growth stalled. The probability of a company coming back after it stalls like that is very low. We do see this as a common thread between some other leaders that had ushered in turnarounds. Namely, I would point to Lee Iacocca, John Chambers at Cisco, also in episode 5, Lou Gerstner too with IBM. I think there were some periods there in his CEO reign where they come in and at a very challenging time work to turn the company around significantly. He built this by doing a successful culture, focused on ensuring his staff and customers were relevant and that their experiences were both positive and assured. He retrained employees, and he does mention simple things as though how to pour an espresso was something that he needed his baristas and his employees to be trained on doing it the proper way so that there was consistency. He gave them ownership and offered them rewards that few other companies have bothered with. He resuscitated the company after it had stalled. So, recapping some of the defining moments of success there in his career, let's go into now the leadership style that he is known for. And so he does come through with a transformative leadership style, I would say. And one of those things is that he had 6 transformation initiatives that he plugged away at Starbucks with: the Maestrina, Conservation International, the Rewards Card, MyStarbucksIdea.com, Pike Place Roast, Clover. He does have his own thoughts on leadership too, Before we get into how he executed and what were the big ideas that helped him execute those transformation initiatives, he does say, I do think effective leaders share two intertwined attributes: an unbridled level of confidence about where their organization are headed and the ability to bring people along. A core capacity of leadership, he says, is the ability to make right decisions while flying blind, basing them on knowledge, wisdom, and the ability to stay wedded to an overriding goal. Creating an engaging, respectful, trusting workplace culture is not the result of any one thing. It's a combination of intent, process, and heart, a trio that must constantly be fine-tuned. He also has some principles here that he summarizes. So he says, grow with discipline, balance intuition with rigor, innovate around the core, don't embrace the status quo, find new ways to see. Never expect a silver bullet. Get your hands dirty. Listen with empathy and over-communicate with transparency. Tell your story, refusing to let others define you. Use authentic experiences to inspire. Stick to your values. They are your foundation. Hold people accountable, but give them the tools to succeed. Make the tough choices. It's how you execute that counts. Be decisive in times of crisis. Be nimble. Find truth in trials and lessons in mistakes. Be responsible for what you see, hear, and do. Believe. So more on the leadership qualities. We mentioned he was transformative. He was also a visionary. And we've, I think, tossed around this term, and it certainly does apply with a lot of these great CEOs and business leaders here. But truly, Howard had the vision for what he wanted in a coffee shop and what he wanted to see Starbucks evolve to. And so from early on, he really had that vision for what it could become and the experience it could provide customers. This drove decisions like his focus on educating employees for customer service excellence. And it really went beyond selling just the coffee beans. He envisioned Starbucks as a third place where people could gather and create a community experience. This vision guided their expansion from a local coffee bean retailer to a global coffeehouse chain. He was also innovative when he was going through that vision, and he demonstrated that in areas like organizational structure, marketing, and the use of technology. His constant push for renewal led things like the launch of Starbucks Rewards program. He was instrumental in the concept of Starbucks as a tech-savvy company. Under his leadership, he pioneered initiatives such as mobile payments, mobile ordering, and the introduction of free Wi-Fi in its stores, showcasing a commitment to innovation in both customer experience and technology. He's also doing this with passion and commitment. So he's known for his visible passion and energy, whether walking store floors or speaking at events. That excitement motivated and connected teams and partners towards goals. His passion for that brand was evident when he returned to the company as CEO in 2008, something he didn't have to do, but he saw that the company was coming up on a challenging time, or in the middle of it, rather. Despite those challenges, he demonstrated unwavering commitment by making tough decisions, including closing stores and refocusing on core aspects of the business to ensure its long-term success. He also places a customer focus from his leadership style. Starbucks' emphasis on creating that unique customer experience is reflected in the design of their stores. He prioritized creating a welcoming atmosphere, providing comfortable seating, and encouraging the baristas to engage with customers, making each visit to Starbucks more than just a transaction, but an experience. He does also show that he cares about the employees and their engagement, so he's developed his own leadership development kind of course and initiatives. They became known for talent practices like servant leadership, with managers supporting baristas. He invests heavily in developing leaders, also implementing initiatives such as offering healthcare benefits to part-time employees and providing stock options, demonstrating a commitment to the well-being and satisfaction of employees efforts aim to create a positive work environment and foster a sense of loyalty among the staff. One thing within the business too is that social responsibility is at the core of Starbucks too. So it's evident in their efforts to source ethically produced coffee beans, engage in fair trade practices, and invest in community development projects. His leadership supported these initiatives, aligning Starbucks with those business practices. Throughout his time, he exhibited resilience. So, despite the setbacks that led him to step away as CEO the first time in 2000, he displayed grit to return, making hard decisions and rebuilding them back from its struggles. They did face those financial difficulties, and he really had the ability to learn from the setbacks that he had experienced and the determination then to overcome those challenges. Communication skills as well, so he's known for his effective communication with employees, shareholders, and the public. His communication style was instrumental in conveying the brand message and creating a strong brand identity. His open letter to Starbucks employees in 2008, which was addressing challenges faced by the company, showcased transparent and effective communication. He does put forth that some of those thoughts too in the book, and he says, "I had written hundreds of memos during my 26 years at the company, and all had shared a common thread. They were about self-examination and the pursuit of excellence, and a willingness not to embrace the status quo." That's another common thread, and one in which Elon Musk of the last episode certainly embraced as well, challenging conventional wisdom and the status quo, not doing that. This is a cornerstone of my leadership philosophy. Starbucks is in the business of exceeding expectations. That means we have to admit it when we are not as good as we think we should be. My role, my duty, is to initiate that discussion, to challenge us as well as myself to be better, especially when we are knocking the cover off the ball. In one way in which he had those 6 transformation initiatives, he calls part of his vision into 7 big moves. So we were to kind of explain those seven moves and what they entail. So 1, be the undisputed coffee authority. Starbucks could not possibly transform the company if we did not excel and lead in our core business. We needed everyone to recognize the quality and passion we exhibit in sourcing, roasting, and brewing coffee. To accomplish this, we would tell our story, as well as improve the quality and delivery of our espresso drinks, reinvent brewed coffee at Starbucks, deliver innovative beverages, and increase our share of the at-home coffee market. 2, engage and inspire our partners. Every partner should be passionate about coffee from soil to cup and possess the skills, enthusiasm, and permission to share that expertise with customers. Going forward, we would significantly improve training and career development for our partners at all levels of the business. And once again, Starbucks would develop meaningful and groundbreaking compensation, benefit, and incentive packages for partners. 3, ignite the emotional attachment with our customers. People come to Starbucks for coffee and human connection. We would put our customers back in the center of the experience by addressing their needs, providing value in a manner congruent with the brand, and developing programs that recognize and reward our most loyal customers. In our stores, we would achieve operational excellence, finding new ways to deliver world-class customer service and perfect beverages while keeping costs in line and our retail partners engaged. 4, expand our global presence while making each store the heart of the local neighborhood. We'd continue to grow our retail presence around the world. Starbucks had less than a 1% share of the global coffee market, but also strive to connect with and support the neighborhoods and cultures that each store serves. Enhancing our local relevancy would mean redesigning existing and new stores, offering new products that reflected the taste of particular cultures, and reaching out by volunteering or fundraising to support local programs and causes. 5, be a leader in ethical sourcing and environmental impact. Starbucks has led the way in treating farmers with respect and dignity, working directly with organizations such as Fair Trade and Conservation International. Now we would expand our efforts, strengthen those partnerships, and forge new ones, as well as reduce each store's environmental footprint. We also had to do a much better job of sharing with others our extensive efforts on this front. 6. Create innovative growth platforms worthy of our coffee. Starbucks would grow not just by adding stores and selling coffee, but also by extending its brand and or expertise to new product platforms, expanding or complementing coffee, such as tea, cold beverages, instant coffee, food, and the booming health and wellness market. Innovation that was relevant to our core and values would be a hallmark of our transformation. Finally, 7, deliver a sustainable economic model. Without a profitable business model, big moves 1 through 6 would not be possible. It was imperative that as we refocused on our customers and our core, we also improved upon how we operated our business by reducing costs and building a world-class supply chain, as well as creating a culture that drove quality and speed and managed expenses on an ongoing basis. Big Move 7 would likely be the most painful, least sexy, and most difficult part of transforming the company. So we went through a lot there with his leadership style, some of the big ideas and big moves that he made within Starbucks. Within this time, Starbucks obviously expands, grows, goes through great success, ups and downs throughout its time. It would also come with some failures, and so we want to highlight those as well. So in 1987, we'll start with after he visits Italy and being inspired by espresso bars there, he left Starbucks to start his own coffee shop first called Il Giornale. 2 years later, he raised enough money to buy Starbucks and merge it, taking over as CEO. Before that, though, he experienced the failure and financial loss of having his startup not succeed on its own. He did end up also selling Starbucks to focus on professional basketball. So he sold Starbucks to focus on owning that team. However, he later regretted the decision as he saw Starbucks growing and expanding without him. He eventually managed to buy the company back in 1988. He also decided to expand into music industry in 1999. So he had the idea of expanding it by selling CDs in its stores and eventually creating its own music label. While this initiative had some success, it also faced challenges, and they eventually phased out CD sales in its stores. In 2007, he stepped down as CEO, ending an enormously successful run in which he grew the company from just 11 stores to 13,000. His departure was largely due to disappointing sales and profits. Company struggled in his absence, though, indicating he maybe had left too soon. In 2008, he had to make the tough choice of closing 7,100 Starbucks stores nationwide for a few hours to retrain baristas and deal with some quality issues that had arisen internally. This demonstrated that even hugely successful companies still need major resets at times. After returning in 2008 to CEO, he spearheaded new store concepts like 15th Avenue Coffee and Tea, which ultimately did not succeed. He could not replicate the game-changing success of the original retail model. We mentioned it before, but the La Boulange bakery acquisition in 2012 for $100 million with the intention of improving its food offerings. However, it was tough to integrate into their operations, and so he ended up closing all those locations. CEO role transition in 2017, so he stepped down as CEO, and during that absence, the company faced some challenges. There were issues related to the implementation of mobile ordering. Starbucks temporarily closed its stores for racial bias training after an incident in Philadelphia where 2 black men were arrested while waiting for a friend. He also did finally have ambitions to get into media, acquiring Maverin and investing in sites like the Daily Beast and Core Power Yoga. These side ventures failed to take off in any major way for Starbucks under his reign. And so finally, that takes us to the last section of Mentors and Heroes. So a good amount here to include Gerald Baldwin, he was one of the original founders of Starbucks. Schultz has credited him, an English teacher, as a mentor who taught him a great deal about building their culture and values around dignity and respect. Alfred Peet, he's the founder of Peet's Coffee and Tea. Schultz has called Peet his coffee godfather. In the early 1980s, Peet taught Schultz a lot about sourcing quality coffee beans and artisanal coffee preparation. The lessons were formative to his vision. Both actually Bill Gates and his dad, Bill Gates Sr., had an involvement. So Bill Gates, although not a direct mentor, had cited observing Gates build Microsoft into saying that Gates' focus on scale and speed inspired Schultz's growth strategy for Starbucks. The father of Bill Gates, too, as a mentor, so he worked with Gates Sr. on various charitable initiatives, and his guidance and philanthropic work may have influenced Schultz's approach to corporate social responsibility. Michael Porter, he's a Harvard Business School professor that Schultz collaborated with while developing Starbucks' strategy in the 1990s. Schultz has said that Porter's insights on competitive strategy directly shaped key decisions at Starbucks. Warren Buffett, another inspiration versus maybe a direct mentor, but Schultz has mentioned being strongly influenced by his investment approach and perspectives on company culture. Schultz brought Buffett in to provide guidance when struggling with the Starbucks business in 2008. In his book, Pour Your Heart Into It, Schultz also mentions various business leaders that inspired him over the years, even though they were not direct mentors like Fred Smith of FedEx and Charles Schwab. Orrin Smith was the CEO of Starbucks before Schultz's return in 2008. Schultz has acknowledged Smith as a mentor who provided valuable insights and support during his early years at Starbucks. Al Yulchi, he worked for him at the coffee equipment company Hammerplast before the Starbucks reign, and so his leadership and mentorship may have contributed to Schultz's understanding of business operations and management. Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Bowker. So these are the original founders of Starbucks, and Schultz joined Starbucks in 1982 when it was a small Seattle-based coffee bean retailer. He was inspired by the founders' commitment to quality coffee and the unique coffeehouse experience. While Schultz eventually bought the company from them, the early influence of these founders played a crucial role in shaping his vision for Starbucks. Myron Mike Ullman was and still is Starbucks' lead director and the chairman and CEO of JCPenney. Mike is not only one of the most respected retail execs in America, having also led R.H. Macy and Company and luxury goods manufacturer LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, but also one of the kindest people I have ever met. He says, "This rare combination of qualities serves Starbucks well." During this period, Mike proved us a supportive confidant and counsel for whom I was grateful. He knew I could not speak to people inside Starbucks about the upcoming transition, and he strongly recommended I work with an outside resource, a firm in New York City that he had worked with for many years. In the book, he also does mention a few other people here, so fortuitously, he spent some time in Hawaii with Michael Dell, founder of PC company Dell, who was spending his holidays nearby. Michael and I had been friends for many years, and only 11 months earlier, he'd returned to Dell as chief executive, replacing someone he'd selected to run the company 2 years prior. Our parallel circumstances were a bit uncanny, and although our respective businesses, coffee and computers, could not have been more different, Michael, as a returning founder, had a unique perspective and insight about what I could expect. He walked him through the chronology of what he had done at Dell 1 year earlier and graciously shared the very documents that had aided his own transition. One tool stood out as particularly applicable to Starbucks. Michael called it the transformation agenda. Neither of these words were part of my or Starbucks' vernacular at the time, but they resonated with me. Transformation spoke to the scale of change that Starbucks had to undertake, but with a positive connotation. The word agenda provided an actual framework. This was key. I was intent on demonstrating, right out the gate, a sense of immediacy and precision in decision making. And finally, a few other more heroes. Frank Sinatra. So Schultz has mentioned Frank Sinatra and his resilience, ability to overcome challenges, and his impact on American culture and entertainment as inspiring him. Abe Lincoln as well, expressing admiration for him. Leadership during the tumultuous period in American history, his dedication to principles, and his commitment to justice have influences Schultz's views on leadership. Walt Disney, he cites as a figure he admires in terms of his creativity, innovation, and the way he built a global entertainment empire. RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, he also often speaks admirably of his social conscience and focus on equality and empowerment of underserved communities. Kennedy's dedication to causes larger than himself have inspired his efforts around social impact. He does mention his father, so while growing up in public housing in Brooklyn, Schultz has said his father demonstrated true moral fiber by always working hard and fighting for his family despite setbacks. This planted the seeds for Schultz's subsequent success. Oprah Winfrey repeatedly praised her for her communication skills, empathy, and ability to inspire people across the country and world. And finally, Nelson Mandela for his grace and dignity, even when facing injustice, as extremely moving. Watching his social impact seems to have reinforced Schultz's desires to leverage Starbucks for good. So Schultz really has considered leaders who combine business excellence with a concern for justice, ethics, and people to be among his personal heroes and influences over his career. So many great mentors and heroes here. And that will wrap it up for episode 23 on Howard Schultz, a great leader in his own right through a few different periods of time for Starbucks. Certainly, we know Starbucks as being ubiquitous in the world and almost in every city as commonplace, but it definitely took a tremendous amount of time, effort, and resilience from Howard to build it into what we know it today. Definitely a transformative and visionary leadership style that he exhibited, and really a great kind of vision for evolving the coffee business and the experience that he wanted people to have at Starbucks. So with that, that's episode 23 again on Howard Schultz, and we will be back here soon for episode 24. Thanks.